What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy, UnclefOOlio, and I'm back with another episode of the Kontroversy, ladies and gentlemen. As always, these episodes are sponsored by Nothing But Knicks. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the notification bell to be notified. Pre-game coverage, post-game coverage, shoot-around videos, obviously, the Kontroversy, Queen's Court. You got the NBA report with Ron and John from Still Knicks Fans. We got it all right here on NBK, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I got a special guest on today's video that I'm going to get to in a second, but I just want to let everyone know that, there's some developing news going around Knick Nation right now. Developing news, obviously, Julius Randle might have requested out of New York after the game yesterday against the Chicago Bulls. We've seen his temperament and his attitude when he walked off the floor, and there seems to be a lot of smoke to that report. So we're going to talk about that to open up the show. And then we're going to get into Tom Thibodeau. Should the Knicks keep Tom Thibodeau or should they fire him? Right? We're going to get directly into that after the Julius Randle thing when we cover the developing news. And then finally, we're going to talk about the kids, right? We've obviously seen how the kids have been playing over the past week or a week and a half and such. Should Tom Thibodeau have played the kids from the beginning of the season? I know people are very hot about that topic, and people have their strong opinions about that, but we're going to talk about that. And I just want everybody to know that my guest that I got on today is the host of the Streets Are Buzzing podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you check him out. There's a link to the description. There's a link in the description of this video to his podcast. He has some dope content on there, ladies and gentlemen. And I just want to introduce my special guest for today's episode, the one and only CT from the Streets of Buzzing podcast. CT, what's going on down under, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, Josh. Salute to the chat. Salute Sim, NBK family. Let's get it.
Let's get it, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I've been, really a big fan of your show. For everyone who does not know, the Streets of Buzzing podcast, like I said, if you go to his channel, he has interviews with a lot of the big media folk that are, covering the Knicks, from Bill Pito from MSG, Peter Vesey. I think Peter Vesey's from Newsday. Mark Berman obviously does a lot of, Knick coverage. He's the Knick beat reporter for the New York Post, as well as a lot of other interviews that he has on there from a lot of people surrounding the team. So make sure you go check out his channel. Once again, there's a link in the description of this video. And just go check him out. He's a real good dude from Australia. Another Knick fan that's from, not from the United States, from other places that are part of the Knicks universe. So CT, thank you for coming on with me, my man. I really appreciate that. Without further ado, though, I know we want to the topic of this video, the main topic of this video is should the Knicks fire Tom Thibodeau? But CT, there's some developing news going around Knick Nation right now, in regards to Julius Randle. Here's a Twitter post from the New York Post sports department. They said Julius Randle could be forcing his way off the Knicks in a James Harden type of way. Wow, right? That is a bombshell of news, right? For someone who just gave a contract to last season, and the contract doesn't kick in until next year. But CT, just off the bat, what do you feel about this story right now, and how do you feel about this Julius Randle situation?
Man, look, to be honest, I can't say I'm surprised. Look, I feel like it's been bubbling. Fans have been wondering all season. Josh, when we watch the games, Julius's body language has changed, and just something hasn't been right since last year. And a lot of fans have been asking what's the reason. But yeah, when I saw today's news, and obviously I saw the footage from the end of the game yesterday, I thought, something's definitely, on the cards.
Right. And yeah, I mean, this body language is not anything new. Like, this has been happening the entire season. And to me, I think it all started when he had the thumbs down incident, right? When that happened and the media kind of ran with that in a way. I think that the fans really felt some kind of way about Julius Randle doing that, and they showed it to him. When he's at the free throw line chanting, "We want OB," and actually cheering for Julius Randle to come out the game at certain points in the season, particularly in the second half of the season, as the Knicks are pretty much on the outside looking into the playoff hunt. I thought that this was big time, and I thought this was something that we definitely need to look out for. And obviously these reports are unconfirmed, right? No one from Knicks organization has substantiated these reports. I know Carton and Roberts from WFAN, big shout out to them. They started their show talking about this, and they said they have unconfirmed reports that Julius Randle, after the game yesterday in Chicago, at Madison Square Garden against Chicago, requested out of New York. So CT, just what do you think the implications are from this? Like, do you think that the Knicks can be able to find a trade partner for Julius Randle in the offseason? Should they find a trade partner for Julius Randle in the offseason? How serious do you think these rumors are?
I think they're very serious, to be honest with you. I think you got to take it seriously now. Now, would I be surprised if Julius stays? I wouldn't. But I think the two, either way, Josh and Chat, the sides need to meet. They need to have a conversation because something, there's unhappiness on both sides. You can see, Julius Randle took a pay cut, by all reports, and I think that might have something to do with it. He wasn't happy with some of the moves made, but there's got to be some things that are got to be talked about, in the off season. And I think in terms of his value, I think he does have value. I think I wouldn't listen to any reports saying Julius doesn't have any value. But either way, to me, Josh, it's not a good look on the organization because he just signed an extension. We are trying to build a stable environment. Leon Rose, in the very limited times that he spoke in his opening press conference, which you can go back and watch, he talked about wanting to build an environment where people want to come and they build stability. But so far, he hasn't really, achieved that, in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't subscribe to the notion that Julius Randle's overpaid. I don't subscribe to the notion that we can't move Julius Randle. I think he has a very, very fair contract. I think he actually gave the Knicks a pay cut because if people want to look at it as saying that Julius Randle waited till he got paid to underperform, right? You can say that, if he would have eventually got paid at some point, let's say he would have replicated what he did last season, brought it into this year, if that's the case, then, we basically would have crapped out this offseason by giving him the contract anyway. So I don't think it's a situation where Julius Randle is, underperforming because he got paid, right? I think it's a situation where, with the fans and all the stuff that's been happening throughout the season, the stuff with his wife on social media with some of the Knicks podcasters and a lot of the Knicks fans, that's what's causing the situation to kind of really sour. I think when it comes to the organization itself, the Knicks organization and Leon Rose, I still think they have a good relationship. I still think Julius Randle has a good relationship with the players in the locker room. I was at the game in Charlotte, and I seen Julius Randle. He was in civilian clothes, what have you, and how he was interacting with his teammates. So I don't think there's bad blood in the Knicks locker room. I think Tom Thibodeau does a really good job of trying to limit the amount of that outside influence that comes into the locker room. But like Sim mentioned on one of the previous shows, fans aren't going anywhere. And I just think that, because that situation exists there, and then you're going to constantly hear it from the fans, every time he misses a free throw or misses a shot, I just don't think the situation is going anywhere. And I think the Knicks should definitely explore trade options for him in the offseason. On top of that, you have the emergence of RJ Barrett now. And I've been on record. A lot of people are coming at me for my Randle take, right? But I've been on record by saying if RJ Barrett is able to take that next step and to be a primary ball handler and to be able to create his own shot, you don't need Julius Randle as much anymore, right? You can be able to find someone else to come in and take his spot, perhaps Obi to come in and take his spot at the 4, because now you have a guy that can handle the basketball and be a primary ball handler, so to speak. And then not to mention you got Cam Reddish coming over here and whatever other moves the Knicks are going to make. So I definitely think they should explore trade options for him in the offseason. I know this is kind of like different than what I was saying earlier in the season, but because those other factors exist and now this, I think the Knicks definitely should pick up the phone. Let me just get into some of these comments right here. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate everyone who's tuning in to me today. And let's see what we have here in the chat. Okay. Jerry Figueroa says, I've said it. I don't blame the fans. I'm pretty mad at him too. I defended him enough, but we don't have to go overboard. Just boo him boo him acting like he's better when you got Sims and McBride. Okay. Let's see. Sherwin M. Salute Sherwin M. He said Julius Randle is the best free agent that signed with the Knicks in over 20 years. What do you think about that?
A free agent signing? I mean, I could see that.
Right? Free agent signing, right?
Melo
was acquired in the trade.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. Reynaldo Maldonado says, listen, bro, best for us and him is to trade him in the offseason. Enough is enough. Okay. Maverick Mach 5 says, salute Josh and CT. Salute to you, my brother. Andy N, my guy from Poland, says Julius Randle's contract includes a 15% trade kicker, according to Bobby Marks. Okay, so that's big when it comes to the CBA and the cap implication. So, that's really big. We need to keep an eye on that if the Knicks decide they want to trade him in the offseason. Keith Dollar says Knicks need to get rid of Randle somehow. King Matthew says, I blame the fans for that. I thought they from New York when he did the thumbs down. I really didn't mind it at all. Crazy how fans got mad after that. I mean, listen, New York fans, they get mad over anything. The smallest little things they will get mad over. You've seen last season, Elfrid Payton was the scapegoat, right? No one wanted to see Elfrid Payton out there on the floor. I'm not sure if he got like the amount of boos that Julius Randle's getting right now, but the entire season, everyone was talking about Elfrid Payton, his poor play. And Julius Randle still averaging 20 and 10, right? It's inefficient. It's not that efficient, but he's still averaging 20 and 10. He's still drawing double teams out there on the floor. Teams are game planning against Julius Randle. However, sometimes I think it's the effort that really rubs people the wrong way. And I do agree. I think, you can't defend his effort or lack thereof. Julius Randle has to give a little bit more effort. There was a play yesterday where the guy came right down the lane off a pass from Zach LaVine and just dunked it with no type of rim protection or anything like that. So I really think that it's really about the effort. Well, what do you think about that, CT?
Yeah, spot on. I think New York Knicks fans, they're one thing that they won't tolerate is that if you're not giving the effort, it's what we hang our hat on. And like Thibs keeps saying, you could affect the games in other ways. Your shot's not falling. What else are you going to do? And I think an underrated fact about Julius's success last season is that not just did he hit every single shot that he took, but he actually gave a lot of effort.
Right.
He's a marginal defender, but he made himself a decent defender last year. So where did that go? Nobody knows.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it went either. I mean, I really think the situation with the fans is really what it's about. A lot of people are saying that it's because of RJ Barrett's emergence, and I don't agree with that at all. I don't think there's a jealousy of Julius Randle to RJ Barrett. Julius Randle already got paid. He already got paid his money, right? So if you want to make the argument it's about jealousy, what would he need to be jealous for? Julius Randle's getting the most paid, highest paid player on the team. Right. So I don't think that's the case at all. Salute to Cully. He said fans got mad because he played like trash and he's the most paid. We're losing. But let's not disregard that, my guys. And salute Josh. Salute to you, Cully. My man, appreciate you. Rheology says, heard the report. So what? He hasn't even rebuilt his value. Y'all are focused way too much on his statistical value, and you forgot how his character and silly antics plays into a locker room. But sometimes that character, that lack of effort is because of the team that he's on or the situation that he's in. You think James Harden, when he was in Houston and everyone and their mama knew that James Harden didn't want to be there, right? He had a bad attitude, right? But he still was putting up statistics, right? And what did he do? He forced his way out of Houston, right? And then came to Brooklyn and was almost led the league in assists, right? So, it just really depends on the situation. That's the nature, unfortunately, of today's NBA. These players have a lot of power when it comes to the collective bargaining agreement, so they can be able to force their way out of situations. And I just want to address, the notion that we can't trade Randle and, that Randle, his value is super low, that we're going to take pennies on the dollar. I just want to show everyone something real quick. CT, take a look at this. This is Russell Westbrook's contract. Russell Westbrook signed a 5-year, $206 million deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2018, right? Since then, he's been traded 3 times in 3 consecutive seasons where he was making $35 million, $38 million, and $41 million. And they're talking about trading him again. So for those who think that Julius Randle's contract is such a bad deal and the Knicks overpaid him, and now because of his poor play or lackadaisical play or what have you, that Julius Randle can't be traded, you can look at a guy right here with a complete albatross of a contract that was traded 3 times in 3 consecutive seasons. So to me, I feel like the Knicks can be able to find a way to move Julius Randle. Personally, CT, and I tweeted this as soon as I heard the news about Julius Randle not wanting to play in New York, I said, pick up the phone and call Phoenix. Pick up the phone and call Phoenix and see what they want for DeAndre Ayton. I believe a sign and trade deal centered around DeAndre Ayton for Julius Randle with some salary fillers. Phoenix, I have to add a little bit more salary to that. I think that makes sense for both sides.
Cool. I'm going to give you
100%.
Credit. I hadn't thought of that deal at all, to be honest. But you, like you said, if teams are like they have a player like Ayton that they're not considering, they want to pay, then maybe a Julius who's under a team-friendly deal might be a nice swap.
Yeah, and that was just one example, right? I think that the possibilities are endless when it comes to Julius Randle's contract, right? Because again, you put Julius Randle in a situation like Phoenix, right? and me and Sim talk about it all the time, Julius Randle is not a number one option on a championship contender. He goes to Phoenix, he's a number 3 option, playing with Devin Booker and with Chris Paul. Chris Paul is someone who can mentor him, who can be that point guard to take the ball out of Julius Randle's hands. To me, that makes the most sense in the world. And I think that move can get Phoenix or keep Phoenix in contention, potentially take them over the top. That's just my opinion about that. And of course, and some certain things have to go right in this situation, right? You have Ayton. If the Phoenix Suns know that Ayton is going to leave in free agency anyway, they're going to want to get what they can get for DeAndre Ayton, right? That's number one. Number two, Mitchell Robinson. If the Knicks feel like Mitchell Robinson is going to be leaving in free agency, to me, DeAndre Ayton is a clear upgrade over Mitchell Robinson. Offensively, we'll probably lose a little bit defensively, but to me, he's a better defensive rebounder, and he can put the ball in the hole. He can score outside the paint. So to me, that makes the most sense. I don't understand why people are saying, this it's not a thing, right? You have King Matthew says Phoenix, nah, right? Let's say Dwayne Dennis says Coach trade Randle. They should be in a war room right now, mapping out who stays, who goes, and who they want to bring in as their first and second options. You play with RJ and the young core. And I agree with that, right? And I agree with that. But I think that's what their plan was from the get-go. I think the Knicks front office knew that they wanted eventually to get this young core in here, right? The Knicks are not a win-now team whatsoever, right? Even though, despite what people may think, the Knicks are not a win-now team. I just think the expectations were a little bit off. Danielle says, why would they trade Ayton for Randle? Stop it, Josh. I just told you why, right? DeAndre Ayton is a free agent in this offseason, right? And if Phoenix feels that DeAndre Ayton is going to be leaving anyway, then they're going to want to get what they can get for DeAndre Ayton. You know what I'm saying? So, and DeAndre Ayton is a former number 1, number 2 pick in the draft, right? So let's not sleep on DeAndre Ayton. A lot of people are saying Ayton is nothing without CP3. Ayton is not good without Paul and Booker. But I'm talking about bringing DeAndre Ayton here to play with RJ Barrett and to play with our young core. He's on that timeline, right? So I just really think people should consider that.
Yeah, and just to add to that quickly, Josh, a lot of these deals are very rarely one player for one player swaps.
Right.
There's picks involved, or there could be other fillers as well. The Knicks have a heap of young assets. Throw in pieces as well to make a deal more enticing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And people say that we get pennies on a dollar. To me, Ayton is not pennies on a dollar for Julius Randle. That is a really good player, or a really good center who's going to command a lot of money this offseason. And I think if we're going to lose Mitchell Robinson, I would love to replace him with DeAndre Ayton. I just think it makes the most sense. Right. But that's how developing story that's happening right now surrounding the team. Julius Randle, whether confirmed or unconfirmed, says that he wants out of New York, and it's an unconfirmed report right now. So, I just think that, we got to see what plays into this. This is going to be the second question of the day, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. We were going to talk about Julius Randle after we finished with Thibs, but this kind of just popped off and happened like right away. So that's the reason why we wanted to start off the topic with this. But CT, the main topic of this video is, should the Knicks fire Tom Thibodeau, right? So I'm going to get your thoughts about Thibs and what's been transpiring this season. How do you feel about Thibs? Talk to me about, your feelings on, how he's developed this team, and what do you think about Tom Thibodeau coming back next season? What do you think about that?
Yeah. So firstly, look, Tom Thibodeau squeezes the most he can out of a roster, right? I think he's better suited for a veteran roster, a team that's closer to contention. And because of that, I feel like the New York Knicks should move on from Tom Thibodeau as well. Like you said, the Knicks overachieved last season. They're not on the timeline that he would like the Knicks to be. We've seen reports of infighting with Brock Aller, mocking him, calling him hinky. Brock Aller is the strategist who wants to build for the long term. He's the one, capologist. He's the one who encouraged Leon to take bad contracts with cap space, take on picks, and build for the future. Now, on the flip side, Tom Thibodeau's philosophy is the complete opposite. He wanted us to sign Gordon Hayward, Marcus Morris Sr., sign Derrick Rose. He pushed for that as well. So Tom Thibodeau, to me, his biggest strength is his weakness for our current situation. And that's the fact that he wants to win right now. He wants to win every minute of every quarter as well. And I think, the writing's on the wall with RJ Barrett, and our timeline to compete just isn't right. And I feel like you see it on the sideline, Josh. He doesn't have the patience You know, if a player makes a mistake, he'll rip his mask off, he'll rip the player, and he might bench them or he might not. But I just feel like it's a philosophy thing where he doesn't have the patience. You know, some of his traits may, you know, help players develop by default. I feel like there's a little bit of that. So that's some of a valid argument that people have. But I think ultimately his weakness is just the fact that he's not patient, and he's pushing Leon Rose every single day for vets, and he wants to compete right now. He's 64 years old, I keep saying. So I feel like the New York Knicks need a coach that's a little bit more, you know, for the long term. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay. So I would say this. I would have no problem moving on from Tom Thibodeau, but it's different from the reasons that you mentioned. First thing I'll say is I have no problem with Tom Thibodeau's coaching philosophy. I have no problem with Thibodeau putting out there to his young players that they need to earn every minute that they have out there on the floor. As a coach myself, and I coached football, I coached high school football when I was living in New York. That's the one thing I stress to my junior people, my freshmen and my sophomores, that you have to earn every down, every play that you're out there on the field, you have to earn, right? And you have to take the person's spot in front of you. So I think that philosophy is a great philosophy to have with younger players. A lot of younger players come into this league and they think that they've automatically earned something that they have not earned, right? And I think Tom Thibodeau's philosophy does them wonders for the long term. I'll also say that as far as development is concerned, Tom Thibodeau has developed a lot of these players. I think I give Thibs a lot of credit for some of this development, right? RJ Barrett, we've seen him, from the beginning of this season till where he is now. That's development. Mitchell Robinson to where he was, under Fizdale, still very, very raw. Now under Thibs, fouling less, right? That is development, right? I'm looking at Immanuel Quickley, right? Immanuel Quickley, who, got some minutes in the summer league and literally took the spots of Dennis Smith Jr. and Frank Ntilikina. That is development. Now, Immanuel Quickley is looking like potentially a point guard of the future, right? So I don't have a problem with the philosophy and the development. But here's where I would fire Tom Thibodeau. Offensive production, a lack thereof. I mean, our offense is just horrible offensive basketball. Even with the kids going out playing extended minutes the past couple games, we're not scoring the ball a lot. Right. And to me, it's because we have an outdated offensive system that Thibs refuses, or I guess can't, adjust and make adjustments to so we can score more points. For the third year in a row, I think we're last in the NBA in pace. Right. And as a modern NBA team, you have to be able to pick up the pace just a little bit. Potentially when you have players like especially when you have players like RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley, like those guys need to be out and running, and Obi. Right. So I just think, from the offensive standpoint, the lack of production, and also defensively, outdated systems, right? His defensive, even though the Knicks have been better defensively this season, compared to where we started, right? I just still think that, we can be able to mix it up a little bit more. And that's the reason why I would move on from Tom Thibodeau from that aspect. But I just don't agree with the development or lack thereof and the philosophy, because I agree with that part of it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying in terms of that avenue. Here's my question to you. If the Knicks had the right roster, that, like I said, we saw Derrick Rose, carry this team last season. That's an example. But if Thibs got the right players, would you be on board with keeping him?
So if by right players, you mean, someone that's not named Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier?
Yeah. Because that is some argument for people that want to keep Thibs. They're saying, hey, let's be honest, they gave him a dud roster. We can't really say they didn't.
Well, this is the same dud roster that have been up multiple games by over 20 points in the second half and in the fourth quarter, but just couldn't close the games out. That would be my response to that. Like, the Knicks have a lot of winnable games this season that they just cannot be able to close. So I think the roster is good enough to compete. You know what I'm saying? Not good enough to win, and probably get deep into the playoffs, but they're good enough to compete. Like, the Knicks have gotten blown out this season a handful of times, right? And that's till, you got your teams like Charlotte came to the Garden and blown us out. And then you had Denver. They came into we never beat Denver. Like, we just can't beat Denver, right? Those are the two that come off the top of my head, but we had a chance to beat Phoenix down the stretch. We lost that game. Brooklyn, we had a chance to beat them. We lost that game. Philadelphia, we had a chance, that we lost that game down the stretch. Atlanta, we had a chance to beat them, right? There was so many games. The Portland game, I mean, it's been just a lot, right? So to me, I think this Knicks roster is good enough to compete, right? And to me, that's a credit to the front office. People are criticizing the front office a lot, saying that Tom Thibodeau doesn't have the pieces he needs. I think he does have the pieces he needs. We just can't be able to close games out. Right. And I think a lot of that is on Tom Thibodeau. A lot of that is on the coach for what he does or does not do towards the end of games. Right. You can blame it on rotations. You can blame it on the play calling style. You can blame it on offense that has Julius Randle, dribbling the ball and being that playmaker. Right. Now, if you want to make the argument that the Knicks don't have another playmaker out there, or RJ Barrett just started to become that playmaker, I agree with that. But I think the Knicks are built to compete right now, not win now, but I think they are built to compete. At the same time, for those who say that the Knicks are built to win now, they're 27th in the NBA in payroll right now. They don't have one max contract on the roster. This team is not built to win right now. It was unrealistic expectations coming into season to believe so. But I do think the front office, and they told you what they wanted to do from the beginning. Leon Rose had the interview. He said that I want to continue to build through the draft, and I want to build a roster that's going to compete. He told you this. But a lot of people, just kind of fed the Kool-Aid from last season in the 4th seed, and they kind of ran with that. So I think that's the reason why we're kind of in this situation right now, wanting to get rid of everybody and get rid of the coach. But to me, it's not a philosophy thing. I think the roster is good enough to win some games, but offensive production is just bad. And we're last in the NBA in points in the paint as well. So.
Yep. And that relates directly to a lack of point guard. Despite this revolving door of coaches and players over the last 20 years, the one constant that the New York Knicks haven't had a reliable point guard that they can rely on. And I think Tom Thibodeau would like to play faster. If let's say the New York Knicks had a younger Derrick Rose or a De'Aaron Fox or somebody who played faster, I think the New York Knicks offense would look definitely better.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the biggest reason why we've won our last 4 games is the emergence of Emmanuel Quickley, his patience, right? And we've been talking about lack of a point guard the entire season, but and we're going to talk about the kids a little bit more in the next the last question that we're going to talk about, right? But we've seen the emergence of Emmanuel Quickley. I don't think Emmanuel Quickley had these types of skills and abilities and his patience early in the season, right? But now he's starting to get that, and that's why we're able to close games out. Take the ball out of Randle's hands, you put it in the hands of a guard, a capable point guard who's patient enough, and you're able to make and create better offense down the stretch of games, right? So that's just how I feel about it, and I totally agree with you as well. Salute to my man Harwill. He says salute to the chat and the panel. Salute to you, Harwill. Make sure you go check my man out on For the Love of the Game podcast for Worldwide L and Project Nerd. Those guys do a great job over there. Make sure you go check my guys out. Drew Licata says, you have a point, Josh. Getting a more offensively creative coach could benefit everyone. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Thibs, our lack of offense and being one of the worst offenses in the league the past 2 years is definitely related to coaching and not being able to mix it up and run different plays and stuff like that. So I definitely agree with that, but also defensively as well. Maybe incorporating a little bit more zone, maybe some trapping, and some combo coverages on defense. I think that could also help us out a lot as well. Joshua Rivera says, if you need to constantly draw up plays, that means you have no superstar talent. I don't agree with that. I say if you need to constantly draw plays, that means you have no point guard. You have no guy that can be the extension of the coach on the floor. It doesn't need to be a superstar. You just need to have a point guard out there on the floor being an extension of the coach to settle everyone down. And that's what Emmanuel Quickley's been doing the last few days. Pudge Knight says Randle fans turned on him crazy. All the pods. I mean, listen, and when people say that I'm a Randle sexual or, I've been capping for Randle the entire season, I really haven't, right? I just wanted to call it fair. And I felt like a lot of the blame was being placed on Julius Randle unfairly for what's been transpiring this season, right? To me, I think that was unfair. But when it comes to other players, people have favorites and they play favoritism. Me, I try to be fair across the board. I try to be objective in my analysis of the Knicks. If you're not playing well, I'm going to tell you you're not playing well. Julius Randle played like complete trash yesterday. And all the rest of the games he's played like complete trash. I call that out as well. I even made a video about it, particularly after the playoffs last season, talking about what Julius Randle did not do. So I am not a Randle fan, and I don't subscribe to anyone saying that I have favoritism and I'm an RJ hater and anything like that. I just try to be fair. That's just me. right? Let's see.
Do you
Go
think
ahead, CT.
do you think he's a black hole in terms of, he has nice numbers, but let's say if it's not relating to wins because the other players don't reach their potential, is Randle a black hole?
Well, I think if you look at it that way, then he would be. But I don't think other players not reaching their potential. In fact, I think players have reached their potential with Randle on the floor, right? So I don't think Randle is a singular reason why players are not reaching their potential. They have reached their potential, and they're going to continue to get better, right? I think that a lot of times people often emphasize that because they don't like Julius Randle and they see our offensive numbers and things of that nature. But I believe if Randle was in the correct role, meaning he's paid like a third guy on a contending team, then I think it'll be a little bit different. People are looking at Randle as the leader because he gets paid the most, but I just don't think that's the case. Now, what you can argue is that the front office probably handicapped Julius Randle in that regard by not giving him other players to play with, right? But at the same time, you can say all of that, but you got to show effort. And I think that's really the big thing for me when it comes to Julius Randle. Lack of effort. You can't defend that. There's no way you can defend that. I wasn't one of the people. I know Sim was saying it about his baby and everything, and I was like, it's possible. But this late in the season, you got to show better effort than that. I'm just sorry.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Just another quick one. Do you think with Woody gone and also Kenny Payne gone, two dudes that could also really relate and hold people more accountable, Thibs is left on his own now?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it as well. I think that's definitely a part of it. But again, I'm not going to make any excuses for lack of effort. You got to be able to show effort. I don't care who your coach is, right? You got to be able to play hard. You got to be able to contend, to play defense. You got to be able to have a better attitude out there on the floor. I think that's the thing that's standing out for me. And to me, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse. Like, I get it. Maybe you are forcing your way out of town. You probably wouldn't want to leave. That's the case. Shut yourself down for the rest of the season. Don't play. What's the point of going out there and playing if you're not going to give it your all? Just a bad look for him. That's the part I can't defend. Salute to young Kobe. He says Thibs and Randle has a symbiotic, I don't know if it's symbolic relationship he was trying to say. One or both has to go. Development, if all were healthy, Grimes, Obi, McBride, Sims will not see the light of day. So this is the biggest thing, the biggest reason why I dislike this way of thinking. Because in the NBA, that's how it works. Guys get hurt, and the younger guys step in to fill their spot. They step in to fill their spot, and they take advantage of their opportunity. Like, unless you're a team that is super, super, super young, like OKC's, Detroit's, even Memphis, right? You're not going into a season saying, I'm going to play all these rookies just because. You're not doing that. You're playing with the guys who you think give you the best opportunity to win. In the beginning of this season, no one was saying that Evan Fournier should come off the bench. No one was saying that. Everyone loved the Knicks front office for bringing in Evan Fournier. He's a guy that can shoot. He's so much better than Reggie Bullock, right? Now everyone's turned on him because the Knicks haven't won so many games, right? But he's been healthy for the most part throughout the entire season. Broke the three-point record. He's literally done everything that we asked him to do. But it took guys getting hurt like Rose, getting hurt, Kemba, getting hurt, right? For guys to get their opportunity, and they're taking advantage of the opportunity. That's showing the coach, Thibs, that I can rely on you now. And I think from moving forward, now that Thibs knows this, those guys are going to get time. All I'm saying is give it to next. If Thibs is here next season, let's watch these kids grow. Now, if we go into next season and these guys are still not getting playing time, that's a problem. That's a problem right away. But sometimes it takes time for these players to get their time. You know what I'm saying? So that's just my opinion on that. What do you think about when people say that if not for the injuries, these kids wouldn't be getting time?
Look, with Tom Thibodeau here, I think they would be getting some time, but not enough. I think fans want to see these players play a lot more, like you say. I think even when Randle's playing well, another thing Thibs wasn't doing great was reducing his minutes. Like now he had quad tightness. Why was he playing 41 plus 42 minutes?
Right.
If you look at some teams in their prime, the Miamis, the Spurs, they would play their stars maybe 32 minutes, 34 minutes, and have them fresh for the postseason.
Yeah, and if you look at what Thibs has been doing over the past few games, I think the minutes distribution has been awesome, right? Julius Randle played 31 minutes yesterday, and Obi played 17 to 18 minutes. I thought that was really good minutes distribution yesterday. And there was a stretch of the game where Obi Toppin played 11 straight minutes, right? When everyone was calling for Julius Randle to come out the game, he put Obi in there, and he literally rode Obi till 4 minutes, 3.5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter until he had to put Randle in because Obi was so tired, right? So I think Thibs has been doing a really good job with his minutes distribution, as the season, has gone on. Now, I do agree that it's taken him a little bit too long to get to that, right? But I still agree with having these players earn their minutes and earn the amount of minutes they get on the floor, because I think that in the long run, that's going to be better for them.
Yeah, if Thibs is safe, which is reports that, that's another question for you. Could Leon Rose really fire Thibs? Because I see him as being a punching bag for Leon. He might like Thibs there to take the hit.
To shield him.
But yeah. Do you think he could get himself to fire him? And if Thibodeau's, been confirmed that he's safe, do you feel like he would be more open to adapt?
Ultimately, a coach's job is going to depend on wins and losses. I've always been of that mindset. The Knicks front office has grounds to fire Tom Thibodeau right now. They just do. Coming off a year where you were the fourth seed, right? And for you to regress so much to potentially not even make the playoffs, that is grounds for dismissal, right? They have grounds to do that. My only concern is, who are you bringing in to replace Thibs, right? I personally am of the mindset I want to bring someone from within the organization, because I think that culture and that philosophy that Thibs has instilled, I want to see that continue to play out. But maybe there just needs to be a new voice to lead that charge, whether it be Johnny Bryant, whether it be, whomever, Aaron Brooks or whoever's sitting back there. I just want that philosophy to remain the same. But I do think, the front office has grounds to say, you didn't win the amount of games that we thought, you were going to win this season, and they have grounds to fire him.
Yeah, there's reports that Dolan's given permission to do it as well. So financially.
Right. Oh yeah, Dolan's he burns 5-year contracts like it's nothing. Yeah, he burns 5-year contracts like it's nothing. And I want to highlight this comment right here. Ahmad Hassan, thank you. He says it's great for RJ and Obi to have someone like Fournier to take the hatred from the fans, to be the scapegoat next season, so there's not much pressure on them mentally. I agree with this 100%. 110%. And I know we're going to talk about the kids in a little bit, but I think this goes to how I feel about this. People are saying that, when they throw the kids out there and let them throw them to the fire, when what happens is, when these kids start to play and we don't win the amount of games or don't play well, everyone wants to trade the kids and get the kids out of here instead of letting them grow naturally into their role, right? And that's where the philosophy comes in, where I think Thibs has done a good job of protecting these kids from all these bullets that are thrown at them. Look at Emmanuel Quickly. Just literally a month ago, everyone wanted Emmanuel Quickly gone. They was like, oh, he's taking bad shots. At the same time, play the kids, forgetting that Emmanuel Quickly is only 22 years old, right? And so that's just an example of why this is a great comment, and the vets are literally taking these bullets. Julius Randle is taking these bullets for Obi Toppin right now, literally taking those bullets. Let's see. Mike Morgan, president of the Emmanuel Quickly fan club. Okay. Let's say Real King says Thibs will never win a chip. You never know. As Knicks fans, we have no right to say who's going to win the chip and who's not, because we haven't won one in 50 years.
Yeah. If D Rose didn't get injured, that was probably his best chance, I'd say.
Right. Lex Millick says the Knicks are a point guard and a star player away. Okay. From what? Contention? I would agree with that. From contention. You can't say they're, a point guard and a star player away from any type of championship. But for contention, I think, I would agree with that. Harwell says, I tried to tell you, Josh. I tried to tell me what? I don't know what he's saying. Boy 72 Abel says, Josh, we don't like Randle. We just don't like Randle game. Randle got no basketball IQ, and he's lazy on defense. I can't disagree with you. I can't disagree with you on that. But he's still giving you 20 and 10. He's still drawing double teams, right? He's still, right as of right now, a really big key to the Knicks offense. So tell me someone that can come in and replace him. If you're telling me right now Obi can come in and replace the production that Julius Randle gives you, you can get rid of Julius Randle, no problem.
Like I said, Josh, Randle can give that effort. It's a choice, I feel like. He did it last year. Watch him, let's say he goes to Dallas, watch him play with maximum effort. It's a situational thing where for some reason he's not giving forth, for 82 games, or I know he says he likes playing a lot of minutes, and every player says that, but would he really like to play slightly less minutes so that he could give more effort?
Right. Yeah. It's a really big question. I have a couple super chats here before we get to the next question. He says, this is from King Things, right? He gave us a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. He says, people forget Randle played in front of 0 fans last year. He can't handle the pressure of New York fans. He's all about himself, not about the team. So here's what I'll say to that. I think that's a problem, not just from Julius Randle's side, but from also the fan base. Like, as New York fans, what do we have in the Knicks organization as a fan base that we can hang our hat on to say that this is what works? We don't have anything. We haven't won a championship in 50 years. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't want to come play here, because of the media and because of the fans. I've said this on numerous occasions, CT. Some of the Knicks fans are just as toxic as the media. Just as toxic as the media. Like, I get it. Like, people are, passionate. I'm very passionate about this team. That's why I do this. I'm sure that's why you do what you do as well. But a lot of times, a lot of people can take it overboard and just create narratives for themselves, right? And a lot of times, a lot of these star players don't want to deal with that. Kevin Durant and the Kyrie Irvings don't want to deal with that. Kyrie goes through enough in Brooklyn. Imagine if he was playing in Madison Square Garden, the great talent that he is. So to me, I just think that's the reason why. What do you think about that, CT?
Yeah, I think so too. And that's why we always say it takes a certain player to come to New York and want to thrive here, want to stay here. And I've been saying it either has to be a player with New York roots or a player that was drafted by New York, like RJ Barrett, that grows up in Nick and learns the ropes, And that's why also Carmelo Anthony was able to, deflect the bullets, because, he knew what he was getting into. But a player like Julius from Texas, or a player from other places, it's a different thing. It's a whole package. You get the fans, the media, and the spotlight. And
right.
It's you got to be willing to take all of it.
And a packed arena almost every home game. Every home game is the Madison Square Garden is packed to the gods, right? So King Things, thank you for that $5 super chat. $2 super chat from Nikki B from Harlem. And thank you very much, Nikki B. He says the Knicks fired Woodson for less back in the day. I agree. They most certainly did. But again, I think that's an issue, because to me, I felt like Mike Woodson shouldn't have gotten fired. Right? I think we should have been a little bit more patient with him. I think defensively, the Knicks weren't top of the league. They were kind of like middle of the pack or whatever. But offensively, we scored a lot of points. We led the league in 3-pointers the year. We won 54 games. Right? So I think offensively, we were putting the ball in the hole when we were scoring. It's just defensively, we couldn't hold up on that side of it. So I wouldn't compare the Tom Thibodeau situation to the Woodson situation. Just my opinion. And let me just get a couple more of these comments in here before we move on to the next one. Let's say Pudge Knight says Thibs will be moved by the front office. Okay. And let's get to some of the newer comments. Big VCEO says his effort is the problem. Totally agree. All right. So CT. So we've touched on Julius Randle. Right, the developing story. We've touched on Tom Thibodeau. Should the Knicks be able to fire Tom Thibodeau? We both agree that the Knicks, probably should move on from Tom Thibodeau, but we have it for different reasons, right? But in regards to Thibs, there's been a lot of talk from a fan base and a lot of people out there saying that Tom Thibodeau should have played the kids from the beginning, and not just play the kids. I mean, play the kids extended minutes. What do you think about this notion from Knicks fans? Do you agree with that? Do you subscribe to that? Or do you think, it was just right how Thibodeau was able to infuse the kids in the rotation and now have them pretty much explode where they are right now? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think there's legs to it. But, let me explain. So I feel like there was a point this season around the 20 to 30 game mark when you evaluate, like you do at the start of a season, you see what's working, what's not working. I think it was very clear some of the things that weren't working defensively, the Kemba Walker thing, Evan Fournier as well. Kemba Walker came out of the rotation, and I feel like we needed some defensive infusion, from defensive-minded players in Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride, and I also feel like I said, Julius's minutes could have been a little bit lower as well. So, do I think he should have just thrown in all the kids and played them, 30-plus minutes? I don't, but I think there was a missed opportunity for Tom Thibodeau to infuse some of the defensive-minded players as well, when our defense was really, really awful with that backcourt.
Yeah. So I understand where you're coming from with that, but here's where I don't think that Tibbs should have given them extended minutes. I don't think they were ready at the time. In the beginning of the season, I just don't think they were at that point and ready. And I totally subscribe to the you have to earn your minutes. Like, I'm not a rookie, brand new rookie coming out, Quentin Grimes, and I like Quentin Grimes. So don't get I like Quentin Grimes. You know what I'm saying? He's one of my favorite kids on the team, right? I'm not I don't have favoritism towards him, but he's just someone I like to see remain on this team. To me, I have a guy like Evan Fournier who is doing everything that I'm asking him to do, shooting 3-pointers, still stretching the floor, things of that nature. You knew he was bad defensively when you signed him, right? I'm not giving Quentin Grimes extended minutes over Evan Fournier. I'm just not doing it. I'm just not doing it. I want Quentin Grimes to go out there and earn his minutes, right? And what happened? He went out there and he earned his minutes, right? So I just don't agree with the notion that Thibs should have given Deuce McBride 20 minutes a game at the beginning of the season and Quentin Grimes. I like the fact that we were able to work up to that point and relied on them when we had injuries and the health and safety protocols and that, from that standpoint. And when they got their opportunity, they came out there and took it. And now Quentin Grimes, as soon as he got that opportunity, he took advantage of that opportunity. And now Thibs does not want to take him out the rotation. That's how it should be. It happens all around the NBA, right? Unless you're a super, super duper young team, youngest team in the NBA, where you have to play your young guys because you don't have anybody else on the roster. I have no problem with what the Knicks have done as far as the minutes distribution and not giving the kids extended minutes, right? Because eventually I believe that will come, right? Sims is now getting extended minutes because of Nerlens Noel's injury, taking full advantage of his opportunity. I already spoke about Grimes. I already spoke about IQ. McBride not playing the point guard. He's playing off of Emmanuel Quickly, right? So I think that's how it happens in the NBA naturally. And I have no problem with what the Knicks did as far as that's concerned.
So you made a really good quote, which I'll bring up. You said you don't think the young kids were ready at the time, or
not for extended minutes. I think they were ready to play and get their spot minutes. Don't get me wrong. McBride should have gotten some spot minutes here and there, but extended minutes, giving them the same amount of minutes that you're giving an Evan Fournier and all of that. No, I was not on board with that.
Okay, so you think that I guess that stretch where Evan Fournier was struggling a lot, and him or Kemba Walker obviously wasn't a great fit defensively. What would you have done in that situation with that backcourt? What do you think was the best move for you?
I would take away some of their minutes. I would definitely take away some of their minutes, and I would give the kids some, again, spot minutes in there for a defensive matchup. Something like that of that. I would have done that. Right? I can't absolve Thibs from that, and not doing that a little bit earlier. However, extended minutes, I think that's a little bit different. When we talk about 30 minutes a game, those are super starter minutes or super heavy rotation minutes for these young kids. And to me, I wanted them to earn that a little bit more before just throwing them out there. Because what would have happened was, and as a coach, I can speak from experience in this standpoint, your veterans run your locker room. Your veterans run your locker room. That's literally the people who these young kids fresh into the NBA are coming in and they're looking up to, not just on the floor, but also in the locker room. So if you disappoint your veterans, you really risk losing your entire team. So for me, from experience, again, the whole philosophy thing I agree with. And I think because Thibs held them back so early in the season, now they're starting to flourish now. I think that's the reason why they're flourishing now is because they were able to take advantage of their minutes, get more confidence, build that confidence up slowly, and that's the reason why you have what they're doing right now.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You made some points. I just feel like the season would have gone a different way if he had, let's say, sat Fournier or reduced his minutes for 5-10 games just to have a look, just to see. And okay, if the kid's not ready, then you put Fournier back. But I think from the fans' perspective, they didn't get to see, that shake up at all. And that's something you made another good point about Fizdale, who would chop and change the lineup a lot. And Tom Thibodeau is the complete opposite. He's like, it's going to take him, almost hell freezing over to lose the trust in his vet.
Right. Salute to Eddie F with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much. He said, could we go into next season with Obi and Cam at the 4, knowing we have Sims as a banger 4-5 if needed? I think it's possible, particularly if you move Randle. I think it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. I think Cam Reddish is going to get a lot of time. I think he's going to come off the bench next season. I don't think he'll be starting. But I think it's definitely possible you can put Cam Reddish and give him rotation minutes because he's able to play multiple positions and defend multiple positions. You can definitely throw him out there at the 4, at the 3, even sometimes at the 2 if the Knicks want to go a little bit bigger. I think that's possible. But I think you'll definitely see Cam Reddish out there in the rotation as a 4, particularly if Julius Randle gets moved. Eddie F., thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Let's see. May 4th, he says, perhaps if Julius didn't have his family all up in the camera, this would be a non-issue. So basically, it's all good as long as it's all good. He's talking about Julius Randle. If Julius Randle didn't have his family there, it would be okay. I just think New York fans go overboard in general. Like, we find that one guy, and I'm saying we, right? We find that one player that we direct all of our energy and focus into when we have a season when we ourselves had unrealistic expectations, and we tend to just pound on guys. To me, I think a little bit of it is unfair. I think a little bit, it is unfair, the way that the fans treat some of these players. Let's see. Granford Rogers said, nobody said 20 minutes, though. That's what they're doing now. That's what they do. The kids are doing now. Like, I have no problems with the rotation right now. These young kids are playing 20 minutes a game, but they had to work up to that. You can't just give them 20 minutes out the gate like everything is all sweet. You know what I'm saying? When you have veterans already in your locker room, right? So that's just, how I feel about that. JJ47K said, Josh is Thibs' son. No, we look nothing alike. Not at all. Truth and Lies of the Philippines. Salute Philippines in the house. Thibs was right to move the kids to the slow. The kids need to earn the time. People just hate on the coach. I agree with that. Kids deserve spot minutes. They got DNPs. I agree. Again, I'm all for spot minutes. But the question was about extended minutes. Extended minutes. Let me get a couple more of these. Pudge Knight says Fournier can stay just off the bench at shooting guard. So who's starting? Who's starting? So you agree with that? So who would you start at the 2? CT.
Well, hopefully, I mean, next season I'm thinking about. Obviously, right now Fournier has to stay, but next season I would like that switched up, and I would like to see, obviously RJ play the shooting guard for me and get a larger small forward. So
you're thinking maybe Reddish?
Ideally, I'd like to get an upgrade, but yeah, Reddish if he's here.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Let's be hypothetical for a moment. Now that we're talking about RJ, Reddish, and everything like that. Let's say Reddish takes that next step, right? You have a Reddish at the 3, you have RJ at the 2, right? How would your rotation look as far as your wing and guard rotation? Just from top to bottom. If you have the roster pretty much stays the same. Let's say Kemba's gone. Let's say Burks is gone, right? How would you shape up your wing and guard rotation for next season if those 2 players are not here? You still have Fournier, but Kemba and Burks are gone. What would you do with that?
Yep. So I think starting from the point, you got to probably have IQ start, Deuce backing him up, or D Rose backing up as well. If he's returning, then you have RJ and he subs out. Fournier comes in, then Burks comes in at the 3.
Let's say Burks isn't here. So Burks is gone. Yeah, Burks is gone. He's gone and Kemba's gone.
Yep.
So you don't have those 2, but you have everyone else.
Yep. Then I still keep Cam at the 3. And whoever we acquire or draft needs to come in and play the backup 3.
Okay. So where do you see any time for Quentin Grimes and Deuce McBride in your hypothetical rotation?
Yep, both.
Okay.
Yep.
So the reason why, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the reason why I asked that question is because when you have a rotation like that, where you have RJ and Cam starting, right, and you have IQ starting, right, so you got 3 young players off the bat starting, right, but you also have young players backing them up. Somebody's going to lose minutes somewhere. Not everyone is going to get extended minutes out of that 6-player rotation, right? And then on top of that, you still have to fill your power forward, your 2 power forwards and your 2 centers, right, to make 10. So I just want people to kind of understand the reason why I'm asking this question, CT, is because not everybody can get extended minutes. Someone is going to be on the outside looking in. So, and I'm not for going with a 12-man rotation at all. I don't think any NBA team does that, right? So, just something to think about.
And that's why Tom Thibodeau didn't really want the Cam Reddish acquisition. People take it as he didn't want Cam Reddish. I didn't take it that way. I took it as he didn't want another acquisition that I'm going to have to play over Evan Fournier.
Yeah. I am Jarrell says, he could have played them sooner and we could have won more games. You don't know that. You do not know that. That is like, just you don't know if Thibs would have played the kids sooner, we would have won more games. I just don't agree with that. And the kids were playing. It's not like they were not playing at all. Like the only two people or the two kids that were not playing at all was Sims and McBride. And when they weren't playing, they were getting equal time down there in the G League, right? So they were still developing, right? So I don't know about that, Jarrell. You my guy, but I don't know about that. Mike K says, I believe it was Jeff Van Gundy watching the Nets lose to the Heat who said he would take all the Knicks starters out the game, more evidence to play the kids months ago. But that's only when that one certain situation. For that particular game, they just weren't playing well. And I know there's a couple other games where the starters weren't playing well at all, and Thibs had to go with the young kids to basically save us right off the bench, right? But again, I just think that I don't know if the season would have changed. I don't know if the outcome would have changed. I don't know if we would have been in, a 4th seed or a 5th seed or a 6th seed, maybe a play-in, maybe we win a little bit more games, but I just don't know.
But
Andrew says the point of us, neither of us know that. Okay, I got you. Go ahead, CT.
I got a question for you. Let's say you didn't think the kids were ready, but do you think putting them in, and let's say you did give them more minutes than what they deserve, do you think that would have accelerated their development even faster?
I think that's a fair question. I think that's a fair question, but I think there's multiple ways to develop. I think, playing time is not the only way you can develop. I also think the mental part of it, right? Because to me, RJ Barrett was playing since day one, right? He's my example. This is the example I'm going to use. RJ Barrett was playing since day one. He was getting major minutes since day one, right? But his mental game took him a little bit longer to develop than his physical game, right? His mental game. And I think playing time, it'll help. But I still think that part of it, being able to see the game and understand your role in the league and taking your lumps as a rookie or your second-year player, I think that is also helping RJ Barrett develop, not just playing time, right? I know as fans, that's all we see. So we looking and we watch these guys play and we say that, they need to play more because that's going to help them develop. But I think time also naturally, not forcing them out there, not pushing them out there, also is good for development. We did that to Kevin Knox out the gate, and Kevin Knox took a long time to adjust, and he still hasn't, right? So I think it's different when you talk about, depending on the player that you talk about, but to me, I have no problem with what Thibs did at the beginning of the season.
And do you think any politics in terms of player salary went into it? Let's say, for example, Evan Fournier was earning $12 million on a 2-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
Would that have affected any likeliness of benching him?
I think it might have played a role. I think that the politics definitely might have played a role, but I also think the fact that he's been around this league, he's a proven scorer, right? And the fact that he is a shooter, right? I think that plays into it as well. I mean, we can all look at it all multiple different ways. I'm not saying that it's completely wrong. I think it's fair to be hypothetical about this question. That's the reason why I ask it. But I'm just looking at the way the kids are playing right now. I struggle to say that Thibs did it wrong when I'm looking at what they're doing right now, and to say that they would develop the wrong way. That's just my opinion. But I think that is a fair question based on salaries and things of that nature. So,
I agree with your points. There is merit towards being harder on the player as well. Like I said, they've got to earn minutes as well. So there is merit definitely in that. I just feel like the season may have gone a bit different if he had started to give them more burn, and not extended minutes, but more burn earlier in the season as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think we're going to continue to ask this question. Next year, let's see what happens in the offseason. The Knicks got a really important offseason ahead of them. Right now, we are our salary cap is pretty much capped out, right? But I believe the Knicks have some contracts they're going to move around. I don't think this roster will be the exact same next season. I think this might be Burks last year. The Knicks are going to try to move him. I think Kemba for sure is gone. I think there's no question Kemba Walker is not going to be here next year. So I think that's all going to be positive. And going back to the development story that we started off with, Julius Randle, has unofficially and unconfirmed requested to be traded from the New York Knicks or to be placed out of town. So we got to look out for these things, CT, as this stuff develops. once again, thank you for coming on. We reached that hour mark. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I'm a real big fan of your show and what you do over there on the streets of buzzing. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go to the link in the description of this video to check out the Streets of Buzzing podcast. Really, really dope content. I know some of you guys don't like Mark Berman, but he has some interviews on there with Mark Berman as well. And you know, getting to take, you know, what's going on with the Knicks situation, the Knicks beat. So CT is always up to speed with what's going on with the Knicks beat because of the people that he interviews. Do you have any final words you want to throw out there to the people, and you know, anything you want to say?
No, first and foremost, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I love talking Knicks, and as always, you know, the chat's been on fire. Appreciate the love. You know, like and subscribe, NBK family, and Josh. Let's do it again.
Definitely, we gotta do it again. I gotta get on your show too, man. I've been, watching from afar, watching your show, and I really appreciate what you're doing. You're doing over there on the Streets of Buzzing. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Streets of Buzzing podcast with your man CT. Make sure you go check him out. Link in the description of this video. He has some really dope content, dope interviews with some people that are following the Knicks beat. So if you want that up to the minute stuff from the people that are around the Knicks and around this situation, make sure you go follow the Streets of Buzzing podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This has been another episode of the Kontroversy. We're going to continue to be covering this Julius Randle story as the season continues to play out. One last question, CT. Do you bench Julius Randle for the rest of the season? Would you do that?
No.
Why not?
I play him because I want his I don't want to kill his value.
You think he can increase his value in the last 7-8 games of the season?
Not increase, but it can go lower if teams, you know, if it's such a, yeah, think of the media storm it's going to create.
Okay. Yeah.
I do reduce his minutes though.
Okay, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Me personally, I would bench him for the rest of the season. I would just put Obi out there, give Taj the backup minutes, and you know, I would just have Julius Randle take a mental break away from this whole situation, and then you know, we'll see what we can be able to do from the offseason. To me, if he doesn't play, he doesn't increase his value, and he doesn't lower his value already than what it already is. So that's just how I feel about that. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Please stay tuned. We're going to be covering all the situation for the rest of the season, as well as in the offseason. I really appreciate everyone coming out, you know, supporting me in the channel and the show. If you have any problems with anything I had to say, put it in the comment section. I'm going to follow up, and I'm going to read your comments, and who knows, I might respond and tell you about yourself. Okay? Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate it, and I'm gone. Peace out.